welcome to Montgomery, Texas, where we are talking about how hard it is to follow a hit album. We are in the new 2026 Genesis GV70, and the Genesis GV70 came out in 2022, and it is one of our favorite luxury SUVs at Driving. We recently did a comparison test with the BMW X3, which it won, despite the fact that, the one that we drove previously was the old gen. Now it's been refreshed, but now Genesis has to do something even harder than making a hit. They have to follow it up. And what they've done is, this is a refresh, it's not an all-new model, so it's not that extreme. We're gonna talk about what's new, what's the same, and if it is still a gem in the segment. And speaking of gems, they listen to me. Look at this shifter, it has these like cut bezels on it, and it's different than this control knob up here for the screen. This was one of my complaints for a long time with the GV70, was that the drive selector knob was too similar to this control knob for the infotainment. Now they've cut different facets into each one so that even at night, even in the dark, just by touch alone, you can feel which is which. I like when automakers actually listen to feedback. On the outside, the story is, well, it's mostly the same. You get a revised MLA set of headlights, multi-lens array, but they're kind of the same shape. It's still the same kind of twin line design in the front and the rear. Genesis says they've reworked the skid plate to be a bolder design. I don't really notice it. It looks nice. Apart from a few details which we'll get into, the exterior is kind of the same. The big news is in here. We have this big 27-inch screen in front of me. So there used to be like a leather upholstered binnacle, and inside of that was a really cool LED screen that had like a three-dimensional kind of element to it. It looked really cool. That is gone, and instead we just have a screen. It has my speedometer, tachometer, whatever you'd like to display, and of course your prerequisite touchscreen over here. It works well. It's easier to reach. The old one was kind of up high on the dash. You were expected to use the click wheel to kind of use it. This one is closer, which is nice, and it's larger, but the overall effect visually perhaps is not as premium. I am in Sport Plus mode, which means there's magma coming off the tachometer. You can see it revving there. And I just think that this big screen look is trendy now, but it might not age well. And before we get on the road, I want to talk about pricing, which I'm going to cheat and use my phone. This stuff is hard to remember. So in Canada, the base price of the GV70 with a 2.5 liter four-cylinder is $60,000. And that goes all the way up to, as you see it here, the V6 Sport Loaded. In Canada, the V6 only has one trim level, it's fully loaded, and it's $84,000. That is a $4,000 price hike compared to the outgoing model. One of the interesting things that they did was that they gave this car launch control. And I know that's everyone's biggest question when we review a mid-size crossover. They say, Clayton, does it have launch control? It does. You put it in Sport Plus, like we have here. Then you press and hold the traction control off button, so you hear it. Now it's fully off. Full brake, full gas, the boost builds, and away we go. And I think every mid-size crossover absolutely needs to be able to do that. We're gonna click it down into sport mode here. Now here on these beautiful roads, I've had a chance to experience it on the curves, accelerating and braking. So here's the breakdown. The Genesis GV70 is still available with a turbocharged 2.5 liter four-cylinder and a twin turbocharged 3.5 liter V6. You still have your choice between the two. That four-cylinder makes 300 horsepower and 311 pound-feet of torque. It's really quite a great engine. And the V6, the twin turbo, 375 horsepower and 390 pound-feet of torque. I can tell you at full throttle, it sounds like this. But you can also hear a bit of a delay between when I said that and when it kicks down. And that's because even though it makes a ton of power, the transmission is not that responsive. Even with the paddles and even in launch mode, in its most aggressive mode, it still feels kind of mushy, especially when you compare it to its German competitors like an X3, the sporty version of which. So the transmission is still a little goopy, which is kind of a shame because the handling is great. But no matter which engine you pick, you get your choice of 10 exterior colors, including one of which is exclusive to Canada. The Americans don't get it. And here's my favorite thing. You also get your choice of 6 different interior colors. Genesis knocks it out of the park with the interior colors. Most car companies, they just give you your choice of maybe black, red, and a tan. No, the Genesis color palette for the interior is great, and they change everything, not just the seats, the door panels, the dash, the console. It all changes color. I love that. It's such a great luxury touch, and I don't know why more people don't do it. The fact that Genesis offers it at this price point is a really, really premium touch. I really like the red on red combo of our tester, and please do your best to ignore the fact that the red paint on our test car doesn't match the silvery blue paint of the car in the Genesis stock footage. Just try to imagine it. Now, the thing with ordering the V6 is you get a lot more than just the extra power. You also get a limited slip differential, active suspension, and with that active suspension, a road scanning technology, which is literally scanning the road ahead of us, reading potholes, and allowing the suspension to adapt before it hits that bump. That's very cool tech, but unfortunately, you only get it with the V6. You gotta pony up to that $84,000. Now, what everyone who buys a GV70 will get is tri-zone climate control, which is pretty cool. So obviously the front passengers, they each have their own climate control settings, and now the rear, they have their independent set as well. Now, when enjoying that active suspension, you're holding onto a redesigned steering wheel, which bizarrely is heavier on purpose. They've added a steering damping weight to the steering wheel itself to supposedly dampen some vibrations coming through the column. It does feel more, how do I say, calm, but it's not a huge difference. But the steering wheel is also D-shaped on the sport models. Standard models get a circle wheel, sport models get a D-shaped steering wheel, but both steering wheels are redesigned from the GV70 as we have known it previously. Other changes in the interior are this little badge right here that says Bang & Olufsen. It used to be a Lexicon stereo. I spent a lot of time listening to the audio in both, and I'm not an expert, but they both just sound really good. I can't say it's a massive upgrade or downgrade, it's just good, and it's still good. Now, with the relocated screen, Genesis has also relocated the ambient cabin lighting. I did get a shot of it. It's kind of hard to capture in this Texas sunlight, but they've made it brighter, and they've actually moved it lower in the cabin. They've basically made the lighting more prominent. A lot of brands like Mercedes are really going wild with the interior mood lighting, and Genesis is not blind to that. They see what people are doing, they see that people are enjoying it. Speaking of lighting, the screen itself has light mode and dark mode, just like your phone. That's pretty interesting, and I like that they're adding these kind of phone-like customization to the screen. The other big difference is this center console. First of all, decked out in carbon fiber, which it wasn't before on this V6. Cup holders are now farther forward, and the phone charging, which used to be a wireless charging pad kind of under a little door up front, is now out in the open, and it's a conventional one where you just lay your phone straight on it. It's honestly not as clean of a look, but Genesis says that people were forgetting their phones inside the lock cubby when they walk out of the car, so I can see why it's a practicality issue. That being said, I kind of like the old design, but this is a lot more functional. As you can imagine from such a modern car, every single charging port in this car is USB-C. If you have a USB-A charging cable, time to upgrade. Now, I'm generally really positive on this interior, and one of the other things I like is the HVAC panel, the controls for my heating, air conditioning, and seats and such. It's actually a touch screen, which I usually don't like, but this is different because it doesn't move. You can't reduce it and make it display your music or your map. This is only ever HVAC control. And I like that because everything's always where I left it. It would be nice to have some haptic feedback to what I'm doing, but the fact that everything stays where I left it is just as good for me. As you could expect in a fully loaded model, we of course have heated and ventilated seats up front. Now, the exterior is basically where you're gonna see the least amount of change. They say they've revised the grille and the headlights, the taillights, the rear panel, and the skid plates, but honestly, these are very subtle changes, and parked even side by side, it's hard for me to pick out what the new one is. Regardless, the effect is nice. It looked nice before, it still looks nice. Technically, they've added a multi-lens array front headlight, and if you get up close, it looks kind of cool. They've got a bunch of little LEDs inset there, but it's the same look as it always had. One thing that's also beneath the skin are inside the spokes of these wheels, which are hollow. That's right, on the V6 Sport models, you get hollow spoke wheels, not for lightweight purposes, but for acoustics. Genesis says that basically the wheels themselves will resonate against the tires, and this creates noise that their customers don't want. So they've created a specially shaped air chamber inside the spoke of the wheel itself, which diverts and dissipates this noise before it enters the cabin. And speaking of the cabin, it has active noise cancellation, basically just like the headphones you'd use on an airplane. It actively reads the sounds that are being produced in the car and equals them out with the opposite frequency so that the inside of the car is really quiet. And I think that's the biggest change that I noticed driving this refreshed GV70, is that inside it is way quieter. I mean, it's not like the old one was loud inside, but like, listen to this. There's nothing. It's so quiet. This is a really nice smooth road, but even on broken pavement, it was just a dream. And so that has been really cool. Other upgrades, perhaps less sexy, all the ADAS systems have been upgraded. They use the adaptive suspension in the V6 models so that if you have adaptive cruise set and it slams on the brakes, it pumps up the front so that it doesn't like dive under braking. It also uses the active suspension as anti-squat when you're accelerating hard. So, you know, it's just kind of using different parts of the active suspension. And I apologize for that boring transit road. Texas is, you know, kind of flat, but we're about to take it on some curvy roads, put it in the sporty mode, and we'll see about the sport utility vehicle. Now, I know backroads driving isn't exactly the highest form of consumer advice, but I mean, we're here, gotta test it out. The Genesis was always a pretty good handling car, very sporty, but I would say that even with the changes they've made, it still does lack the handling edge on its German competitors. That being said, you can't say it isn't fast. 375 twin turbocharged horsepower, all-wheel drive, good limited slip rear differential. This is a fast car, and it's fun to drive quickly, but I mean, it's not like, you know what? I drove the Marizo LBX a while ago, and that is an actually sporty driving experience in an SUV, or Macan S. But this does not feel as crisp as a Macan. This feels heavier and more isolated than a Macan on a back road. The paddles also aren't super responsive to what I want them to do, and I know it's not a sports car, but if you have the paddles, I want them to do what I want them to do. So it's maybe more utility than sport. And I don't think you'd take it on any track days, but it handles nicely, it quits itself well, and you can really feel the active suspension. There's not a lot of body roll. You can't fault it for that. If you click it up into the sporty setting, it does kind of fool you a little bit. You kind of forget you're driving a very heavy SUV. Overall, the GV70, I think they've changed just enough to keep this car current. We liked the GV70. It basically smashed every comparison test we ever put it in. We definitely like this car. The recipe that underpins it is good. They didn't have to reinvent the wheel, and I'm glad that they didn't. There are some things I'm on the fence about that I'm not quite sure are true upgrades, like this big screen instead of the binnacle. I could take it or leave it, but the basic formula remains really, really good. The hardest part about a hit album is following it up, and I like the second album from Genesis. So there you have it. That's our first drive of the 2026 Genesis GV70. And if you're like us, we're already thinking about what cars we should compare it to next. Let us know in the comments what you'd like to see. For Driving.ca, I'm Clayton Seams.